Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. We begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We glorify Him, we praise Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we send peace and salutation on His last and final messenger, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I welcome you all to the corporate session. And this week, inshallah, mashallah, we have with us Brother Naushad Wahab, all the way from the United States of America. We're going to introduce him in a short while from now, and we're going to talk about why is he going to speak on this subject. But before we do that, let me quickly introduce to you about the Corporate Relationship Program, the CRP department at the IOU. The International Open University recently started its Corporate Relationship Program department, the CRP department. The CRP department focuses on introducing our students to the corporate sector. The CRP department gives opportunity to our students to interact with corporates while being students. It gives them an opportunity to start interacting with them and understanding what exactly is happening in the real market. Many of us as students feel that whatever we're reading in the books, in the materials, that's good enough. But that's not the case. In the real market, things might be different. You might need to know what exactly happens in the corporate sector, which might be slightly different from what is being taught in the studying material. So through these corporate sessions, we have corporate experts, professionals, domain experts who join us for these sessions, and they give us an opportunity to know what exactly is happening in the corporate sector. Now, I would request all of you to please mute yourself. I can see some of you are unmuted. I would request all of you or who have joined on Zoom right now, kindly mute yourself. Please only allow our guest, Mr. Naushad Wahab, to stay unmuted, and me, who will be hosting the program, I'll stay unmuted. All right. Thank you so much. Now, why have we chosen the topic on career in IT sector? Now, many of you who might have just started listening to this video might feel, this is not for us. IT is not my expertise. I'm in finance sector. I'm probably studying marketing. I'm studying finance. I'm studying HR. This is a wake-up call. Today, we are seeing more and more managers are being recruited in important positions, whether it is finance, whether it is marketing, whether it is HR, whether it is supply chain. They expect you to have basic IT knowledge, and the basic IT knowledge is gone beyond knowing how to run a computer, how to use MS Office tools. There is much more than this. So today's manager is expected to have knowledge across all important fields. Not merely the knowledge of finance is enough. You need to have a bit of knowledge of IT as well. And how you can blend your finance knowledge with IT is where your success depends. Likewise, if you're in marketing, you will need to blend your knowledge of marketing with your expertise in IT in order to be a successful entrepreneur. So Mr. Naushad Wahab today will actually shed light not only to those who are purely IT student, but as a non-IT student, you might find this session interesting as well. Now, I take this moment to introduce to all of you Mr. Naushad Wahab with us. First and foremost, welcome, Mr. Naushad Wahab.
Shukriya.
Okay, Mr. Naushad Wahab is an IT professional. He has more than 2 decades of work experience, and he has worked across various business domains: retail, banking and finance, insurance and life sciences, and pharmaceuticals. Okay, so you could see, it's not merely IT. With a graduation in science with physics major and a master's degree in computer application, Naushad has worked in various roles, including software development, quality assurance, and now he is leading the DevOps initiatives at Biogen at Cambridge, USA. Nashad is currently settled in Boston with his family, and outside of work, he is an avid electronics and an amateur radio enthusiast. And he also pursues deep interest in nature photography and painting. Thank you so much, Mr. Naushad, for joining us for this session. It is indeed an honor for us to have you over, and I'm sure the students are going to benefit from this session. I would request all the students now to pay attention to Mr. Naushad Wahab. Take your notes, make your notes, and if you have any questions, we will be opening up the question sessions shortly, and we will take up the questions then. Over to you, Mr. Naushad Wahab.
Shukriya. Thank you very much, Mr. Mansoor, for this opportunity. My name is Naushad, but most people know me as Shad. So you can consider me calling as Shad or Naushad. Either ways is fine. And thank you very much for attending, taking time. I'll briefly go over what I have experienced in my career and in my education and in general overall in my career so far in the last 20 years. So basically, I graduated in science, but electronics used to be my interest while doing the work on hobby and then various kinds of experiments. And I used to be interested in learning a lot of things. It was difficult for me to take out time for all these different hobbies, but eventually I was able to enjoy my hobby as well. So I did my master's in computer applications. At that time, it was very difficult for somebody to like get a job. It is not easy to come out from a small place that I belong to and make a career in IT. I joined my first job as a small in a small company that was a startup, and I pretty much did everything on my own, like even installing software to doing testing and various things that was required. It was a small company. Slowly, I learned a lot of things, and I moved to various different companies. And finally, I landed up in the US about 14 years ago, and I was able to make my career here in various fields and work with various industry domains. So I'll briefly go over, I've made a small presentation for your benefit. I'll cover very basic points here. What is IT and its role in business? I'll talk about the current IT trends and what is required to be successful as an IT professional. I'll give you some tips to balance life and career in IT that you may find useful. Okay, and I'll take some questions at the end after this. This is going to be just 15, 20 minutes of my slides. There are just 4 slides here. I'll go through that. So let's look at what is IT, right? So we know that there are various kinds of companies that we work for. And the first type of company is a technology-based company, right? When we talk about Amazon, when we talk about Google and Microsoft, we are talking basically about a pure technology company. The company that core business is making software or making some platforms or infrastructure for the businesses to use. And then there are other companies that are business focused, right? So there are companies that don't necessarily do pure IT, but they are into various kinds of business like insurance business or maybe travel business, telecom business, and so on. And I can give you some examples of the technology company like I just spoke about. There are companies which are focused on hardware manufacturing or even telecom manufacturing or chip making, things, companies like that. You have very common examples we all know of. There are many, many hundreds of companies which do basic technology work. And then there are examples of the business-based companies which are more into their own business domain. Like either it is pharmaceutical business or retail business or telecom business, even banking, insurance, etc. So there are two different kinds of companies. There are some companies these days, they are so much technology focused that they call themselves a technology company. And you will be surprised to know that companies like even Nike, which manufacture shoes or apparels, they call themselves as a technology company. because their primary focus is how to make the consumer experience, the client experience, the buying experience easy for their customers and make satisfied customers. There are companies like Nike, Apple. So Apple, that it makes smartphones, right? Apple makes laptops, smartphones, and other hardware products, but they're not really a manufacturing company. They're essentially a technology company. That's what makes them different. And then there are companies that are kind of IT service providers. Uh, it might be a little confusing. In fact, it was confusing to me in the beginning when I started my career that what really these companies do. And companies like HCL Technologies or Infosys, Cognizant, Accenture, all these companies call themselves. I work in information technology. If somebody works there, they're essentially IT service provider. There's also a term called system integrators, SIs, and they are known by various different terms. But what they do is they help the business focused company and sometimes the technology focused companies also to accomplish their business goals. So they provide this supporting in platform or in terms of human resources or technology or tools, etc. And they support these different types of companies, either technology focused companies or the business focused companies. Okay, so that was the answer to the question that I used to have, like how these companies fit into that picture. Now there's one very interesting thing that I found when I joined Infosys almost in the beginning of like 2004 or something. When I joined Infosys, that the whole company is really divided into sectors. Like Mr. Mansoor mentioned about when you do work in marketing and when you do management, etc. How that plays a role in information technology, right? That's one of the things that many of us ask. And the answer to that is like when these companies work with the various business focused companies, they divide their workforce into various areas. Like there's a need for a domain expertise, so then they divide their whole structure into, say, this is the group of individual or the uh, department which will only focus on companies that work on finance, or they have another department with expertise on, say, retail, for example, or they have another department which only focuses on the biotechnology and the pharmaceutical industries. So these divisions are there in order to make them better in the business. Because when you look at what a business company requires from an IT, they require IT to support their business goals, right? It's not, IT is not their core business, but their core business is, say, research and development on medicines, or making better travel experience. If it is a if it's a travel company, if it is a telecom company, it will make it better and faster, say, internet connectivity or mobile connectivity. So when they look at their business and say that, okay, I need IT for supporting my business, I need experts who can not only help me in programming or fixing or the software or the tools that they use, but also understand their business. If they don't understand their business, it is of less value to me. That's what they consider. And therefore, these service providers, they make sure that their workforce, which are essentially who are essentially IT professionals, they not only have information technology knowledge, but also the business domain knowledge. And that combination is really useful in today's world. People want to have more interaction, closer collaboration with technology and business, so that both of them work towards the success of the company. So just to take away from this slide is the two domains that our businesses and the technology are focused on. Technology domains are like, you have network, telecom, or maybe chip making, or maybe cloud provider. I'll come to that afterwards. And then you have business domains like travel, pharmaceutical, telecom, etc. So this is how the whole structure, how the business is divided and spread over the IT landscape. All right, so moving on, what are the current trends in the information technology world today? There are many things that we hear, and I'm not going to talk about every single current trends that is going on in terms of tools, technology, and process, etc. But I'll talk only on three unique technology trends that I feel is really relevant in today's scenario. The first and foremost trend that I'm seeing is automation. A lot of times when we talk about automation, a typical image comes to my mind generally is like, okay, automating maybe test automation. Because I have been into QA and test automation for a long time, I used to think that automation is all about test automation right in the beginning of my career. But when I started to do more and more automation, I realized that it's not just automation of the testing, but automation of almost every single thing that you look at in the IT information technology world today. Automation of the business process, for example, or automation of the software that you deliver, for example. So automation is really embedded, is really part of every piece of our software life cycle or product software product life cycle. You can talk about automation in creating the infrastructure, or you can talk about automation of simple processes that are repeated and monotonous in nature. So the primary reason why automation comes here is the task that is performed manually, which is monotonous, which is repeatable, and which requires a high degree of accuracy. So, human nature, when we do something repeatedly, we get bored, right? So we get bored, we don't want to do it, and then sometimes we make errors doing the same task over and over again. That's where automation fits in. So that's one of the trends that I'm seeing is really being talked about in the information technology world today. The second trend that I see is cloud. Now, most of us might be already familiar with the cloud concept and how the cloud is so useful for information technology and all kinds of business companies. Cloud essentially is nothing but is an extension of the infrastructure. In olden days, when not maybe 10 years ago and a little bit more than that, 10, 20 years ago, companies did not really have how outside infrastructure, right? So everything that the company needed had to be purchased, had to be set up in their own building. I remember when I joined this first company, the startup company that after I completed my education, this company really did not have any infrastructure, right? So they had to purchase big computers. We used to call that CPU, or that motherboards and processors, etc. And we used to have that in a room filled with wires, and they were all connected. And then when we decided to host our website on public platform, we hired a company in the US. I was in Delhi at that time, and we hired a company and that provided various servers, right? So we had to have that server set up to our needs. We configured our server, we connected to them remotely, and we built our website, everything on that server. It was very cumbersome. Even if we had fewer users, it was hard to understand how many servers we need. If the user base increases, how do I scale up? How do I increase the number of servers? It was all very complex and a very costly thing. Cloud really solves all that problem. Cloud allows the companies to make their own servers, make their own databases and everything, and you don't have to install anything. Nothing comes in CD form anymore, right? These days, everything is available online. The high-speed internet connectivity provides that facility to have everything streaming, everything available on the web, so that you don't have to store anything locally. That is where the cloud really helps. And we all are familiar with that. In fact, we might be already using some of the things on the cloud, like storing of our files on the internet. That is nothing but a file storage available in the cloud. In fact, software as a service and infrastructure as a service, which I have mentioned, is an offshoot of the cloud technology only. Software as a service essentially means that you are using a software which is available on the cloud. And Gmail or any email that we use, it is a simple example of a software as a service. Service is what? Email, and it is available on the cloud. So that is one trend that we have seen over the years grown really in popularity. And one of the one of the challenge that the companies faced initially about 5 years, 6 years ago was the security issue with the cloud. Now I'm seeing more and more adoption. Even the highest security companies like um, defense department, for example, or biotechnology, for example, they have so much data, and those data is so uh, they are so critical for the success of those companies, and they never wanted to put that on the cloud, but today they are all putting it there because there is a higher level of security available. There is better management of the infrastructure, so there is no reason why a company does not want to go to the cloud technology. So that's the second biggest trend that is happening in these days in the information technology world today. And the third is business value. Whenever I speak to the business, regardless of what business that company might be in, it could be in the retail, it could be in telecom, they say that I want more business value. How do I get more business value? What is really value to the business, right? If the customer is satisfied, for example, or if I'm able to manufacture as per the customer's need, or if there is a new trend in the business and there's something new has come up and the business wants to change their model to adapt to that latest trend in the consumer behavior, that is where the business value is. So when the business needs value, uh, it needs to have IT supporting that value, right? So IT is basically a support organization. It works with the business to help them achieve their goals. Some of the things that business are trying to do is creating a value stream. Value stream is nothing but types of work that the company does in terms of information technology. There are many types of work that we do in information technology. One type of work at a higher level I can tell you is, how do I add nice latest software, more and more features? Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say there is an iPhone, right? iPhone has nice features and there's new capability that has come in, but I may be having trouble with some basic feature of the iPhone. Now, a company like Apple would see that, oh, do I have to fix the feature first, or do I have to make new features in the iPhone? What is really important to them? And the trend today is therefore they have two types of streams. One to fix the issue, and the other is to build new features, right? So those are the two streams, and the business really benefits from focusing on the value that they are getting from the customer, and therefore the success of their own business organization. Time to market is obviously one of the trend that, I want faster, but I want better value. So these are the three business trends that I'm seeing in the world of information technology. Going over to what makes an IT professional successful. What are the real traits that are required for someone in the information technology world, regardless of what they are doing? Regardless of whether you are business-facing information technology professional, or you're sitting on a laptop and you're doing some programming or coding. Some of the traits that I have sorted out here and summarized, I'll go over that. So think bigger picture. This is really important, when we talk about small groups of people. Let's say you get a job as a QA tester, or you get a job as a software developer, or you get job as a business analyst, IT business analyst, business facing role. If you don't really look at the bigger picture and only look at what is the silo, what is the specific area that you are supposed to work in, sooner or later you will lose the traction, you will lose the direction where the company is going. So in order to make sure that you are in line, you are aligned with the business goals, the basic reason why that business or the company is existing is very, very important. You need to understand how every other organization is working, how every other department is working, how my work is being done, taken by another group. Imagine factory belt, like where you used to, where in olden days you used to produce, even today, like car manufacturing, for example. One department is putting the wheels, the other department is putting the doors to the car, the other department is painting the car. You really need to have a bigger picture of the entire software development of the company's business that you are working in. So that's very important trait. The other is ask questions. I will tell you from my own example what happened when I was working with a company called Capgemini. It used to be Canva at that time. We used to sit in meetings with the business. When business used to talk about the various requirements, saying that this is what they want, this is how they want the software to be developed. And being in a QA team, we really did not have any role to define that requirement. But what we did at that time is that we said that, no, we want a seat at the table. We want to be part of the discussion that defines the business requirement. And I realized that asking question is so important. Sometimes the question can come from any person. It doesn't matter where that person is and what role that person is playing in your organization. If there is a valid question, if the person really does not understand something and wants to ask a question, it should always be encouraged. It should always be answered. And if you don't have an answer to that question, the business has a problem. So it is important for us to ask questions at any point of time, no matter, even if it is the last stage and you think that asking questions will make me look foolish, it will make me look stupid, it doesn't matter. If I have a question, it is a legitimate question and that has to be answered. And that is what I learned, that this is very, very important. Don't hesitate, ask questions as many as you have. The third aspect is build credibility or trust. Now, we work not as an individual, right? Everybody works as a team. We all talk about success of the team, not the success of the individual. It is important to build that trust within the team, within the organization. And there are few things that we can do to build trust. One of the thing is make sure that whatever you promise is delivered. Don't promise anything that you cannot deliver. The other thing that you can do is just be an example, lead by example. You have to be talking the same thing as you are, you have to be doing the same thing as you're talking, right? So you cannot just talk in vacuum and then do something else after that. You have to set an example. You have to make sure that you commit something and then fulfill that. That will help you build the trust, build the credibility that you need to be successful in this environment. All right. The next trait is be assertive. I've seen, I worked in India and I worked abroad and I worked with many multinational companies. One of the traits that I have seen is kind of lacking in people who are from developing countries, people who still are kind of getting to know their customers, is that they are very shy about asking things, shy about being assertive. If we think that something cannot be done, you have to say it cannot be done. You cannot sugarcoat it. You cannot say that, okay, I will try to do it and let me see if I can do it or not. Don't make false promises. Be assertive. If something you think that cannot be achieved, if something is really impossible, or it is not really possible for you to even do it by the existing mechanism or tools that you have at your disposal, just tell them. Be assertive. Be clear in your communication. The next one is think outside of the box. Now, I'll tell you an example. Recently, I was interviewing one person for a position in my company. And I asked him, will you be able to do this job? I'm just giving you a broad example instead of going into specifics, is that if something comes to you and you are asked to do that, will you be able to do it? He said that if I don't have the necessary tools, I will not be able to do it. I will reject that. And I disagree. It doesn't really matter what tool and technology that you have today. You should always be very solution oriented. You should always try to think that if there is a problem, if there is a customer that requires something, how can I really solve that problem? How can I help that customer to achieve what they want to achieve? So thinking outside of the box is really important, because it doesn't matter what type of things that you have, what type of tools and technologies and software that you have. It is important to understand how they all work together, how you can think of a solution where a typical solution does not work. That is where thinking outside of the box matters. And last but not the least, keep learning. There is nothing to stop us from learning. We all know that regardless of the profession that we are in, we are constantly in a changing environment, right? New technologies keep coming up, new ways of working keeps coming up. You have to make sure that you have to take out time, maybe an hour or 2 hours every week, to learn a new programming language, to learn a new way of working. Even general training on the processes and best practices is always a good idea to make you successful. So these are the things that are very important traits of a successful IT professional. Most importantly, which is like not on this slide, I did put that on the slide, is the ability to communicate. Right, so ability to communicate is really important to be successful. I'll also give you one example from my past career, is that I was working in a team. It was about 12 or 13 people team in a major banking organization. And there was one individual who was really good in technology. And I asked that person how many, we used to talk about that this person had 18 certifications at that time. 18 certification, technology certification, huge. That person had co-authored the books also, very really popular books. Not really popular in the sense that, but it was very vital books on information technology and programming, etc. But this person had a problem with communication, not able to express, not able to have a conversation with the customers, the clients. And it was one of the factors how this individual, this software professional, was not able to be successful as much as that person could have been. So communication is really important. You have to be a little bit extrovert and start communicating with the customers, understand where they're coming from, what they're thinking, and and all of these different traits are really helpful in making you successful. Moving over my last slide, this is the last slide that I have, and after that I'll take questions. What are the things that you can do in order to make better work-life balance, in order to be comfortable in the position that you are in? Ask for sufficient time. But sometimes when we commit, when we say, okay, can this be done in 8 hours? Can this be done in 16 hours? How many days do you need? Ask for time so that you leave out some bandwidth, something to play around with. Let's say something happens and you are not able to fulfill that commitment. So if you, instead of asking for 1 day, if the things can be done in 1 day, ask for 1.5 days, just to keep that extra margin. And you can always deliver in 1 day if it is able to finish during that time. So ask for sufficient time is always helpful. Keep a backup for yourself. Now, many times when we have a lot of responsibility, we think that, okay, I can take care of it. But what if you're not available? What's up if something happens and you have a personal commitment or something that you have to look at? You have to have a backup, somebody who can backfill you, who can support you when you're not there. So that's an important thing you have to all keep in mind, that when I'm not available, there's somebody to take care of it. The third thing is keep your supervisor in loop. So no matter which hierarchy that we are in, like even if you are in a VP position or if you are a senior director, it's important that the person that you're reporting to is always in loop, is always aware of what you are doing. You cannot work in isolation. You cannot work in a completely cut off position that your supervisor does not have any idea what you're doing. This is also helpful for appraisals and evaluations when your supervisors look at your performance over the year or for a given period. They can look at what are the things that you have been doing. In fact, sometimes when bad things happen, when something that happened was not expected, your supervisor understands your progress, understands where you're coming from, and they should reward the mistakes, because rewarding mistakes is not something that we are very used to, but it is an important way to learn new things. Unless we make mistake, we cannot learn new things. So that's very important. Keep everybody in loop. And then one of the things that I feel is choosing the correct way to communicate. We all know that there are various ways to communicate. You can set up a meeting, you can just email some information, or you can just pick up the phone and talk to that person. So understand what is the correct way to communicate and choose that way to communicate. Not every way is right for every situation. So be mindful of that, and that will help us all as IT professionals to be successful and to be comfortable and have a better work-life balance. So with that, I will end this presentation, but this is the right time to ask questions if you have any. So I'll open it up and can take questions now.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Naushad, for that enlightening presentation. And I'm sure all of you who are listening to this session right now have benefited from the advice that has been given to us by Mr. Naushad. I personally, though I'm not from the field of IT directly, or for that matter, indirectly, but nowadays, of course, you can't say you're not in the field indirectly. Somewhere or the other, you do get linked up to the IT. Some of the important things that I personally made note of was when he was mentioning about what should be the approach that an individual needs to have in the IT sector. And this is something amazing, isn't it? That this is true for all the sectors, to be assertive, to build credibility or trust. And I think this is the most important thing. Building credibility or trust means you need to be an ethical leader. If you are a man of ethic, you build credibility, you build trust around yourself. Thinking outside of the box, continuous learning. In fact, qualities of good leaders are that they're continuously upgrading themselves, especially in the IT sector where you need to keep upskilling yourself. So, as the gentleman, Mr. Naushad, mentioned to us, keep learning, think of the bigger picture, and ask questions, don't hesitate. And something which he didn't mention but made the maximum stress on, or put the maximum stress on, was communication, our ability to communicate. And I think this is so important. Mr. Naushad, I will share with you quickly. I was in Malaysia a couple of years back attending an Islamic finance conference. And one of the gentlemen who was sitting there, he was working with the HSBC Amana, the Islamic finance wing in Malaysia. And he was addressing the students. And of course, most of the students were the locals. And he pointed out that most of our students from Malaysia, they lose out job opportunities in the Middle East to Indians because Indians have a better communication skill compared to us. I don't know how true that is. We probably need to do research and find out. But being an Indian sitting in the audience, I was all smiles. But nonetheless,
That's
let's
interesting.
open up. Let's open up the forum for questions. Yes, we do have questions coming in, and I'm going to straight away throw up the question to you. There's a question which is from Brother Noman, one of our students. He would like to know what is the role of data structure and algorithm in the IT sector, and what are the tips that you can give to some of the students who wish to, progress in this sector.
Definitely. So data structure and algorithm is one of the building blocks of software, and especially true in the world today where a large amounts of data is being processed, and there is a need to process large amount of data, and their data is coming from all directions. You have known, most of us know about something called big data. Now, big data is like unstructured data that really is useful, but until now, there was no way to find out how to make sense of the data, right? So that's the most important part the companies are struggling with these days. The role of data structure and algorithm really comes in when you're building those software that processes data. So somebody who is an expert on data structures and algorithms would find a better opportunity in companies that make those software which processes data. Companies that are focused on how to make it simpler for the business, because business wants simplicity. Business does not want to deal with all the nitty-gritties, and they don't want to get down to the level of software, but they want their business to be done, right? So their job to be done. So that is so the companies that make that business easier are the ones that make those software, right? So that is where the opportunities lie. The core software companies that makes those software for use in the business world.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll take the next question, which is from Abu Yusra. He would like to know, can you elaborate on automation? Is it possible to have an automated software for generation or generating examination questions for schools? Can you give me some advice?
Sure. So automation is really useful when you are doing a repeated task. When something is manually done over and over again, and you keep, and you need to do it faster. So something like process of preparing questions for exams, for example, right? That necessarily does not qualify to be a good candidate for automation, and it is rather done better by manual process. Like if you look at the question and understand the level of that question and whether that question should be added to the sample or not. So really, it's not a good candidate. However, if you speak from a technological standpoint, it is definitely possible. So automation is something that you write in terms of program. Any activity that you do, do this and this, step 2, do this and this, and you just repeat it, and you hand that paper to somebody to just repeat what is being written as steps, it is possible to automate. So automation does not require a lot of information. It just requires a robotic process, a well-defined process to just repeat it, and you just translate into a program. You can use C program, you can use anything like, for example, uh, Visual Basic or Java or Python. It doesn't really matter. You can automate it.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. There's another question, which is, can you suggest ways to learn software development on the internet from the scratch?
Absolutely. So in olden days, what we used to do, in fact, when I was doing my master's in computer application, we had to have floppy disk, and we used to have hard drive that stored the program. We needed to have a computer. Of course, computer is a given. You have to have a laptop or a desktop to learn software, but you don't really need to install anything. There are a lot of websites available, and I can provide you the links in the follow-up if possible. Places where you can directly write programs, you can compile those programs, you can learn from that. So it is very easy, and this is one of the example of cloud-based computing technology, right? So when I mentioned cloud as one of the trend, this is exactly what it is. You can learn development, you can learn programming, compiling, you can do a lot of things directly on the cloud. You don't need anything installed on your laptop or desktop. It is absolutely not required.
Okay. The next question, and this is from Rabia. She would like to know, learning which programming language will be most beneficial for a career in the IT sector?
Great question. So one of the things that is really trend and being talked about these days in the information technology world is called DevOps. Um, I know that this is not a session for DevOps, but I have taken many DevOps sessions as I am in the initiative that is being done in Biogen. But in terms of the programming language, there's one programming language. If I have to ask you, Python. Python is very, very useful, and it is almost used at all the places. And when it comes to cloud, when it comes to cloud infrastructure, automation, Python is really good. And the other language that you can learn is JSON, JSON. It stands for JavaScript Notification. This is also a very good language to learn besides Python. So Python and JSON are the recommended options.
Okay, there's another question, and this question, by the way, is from me out of curiosity. I would like to know, what is the lifespan of the IT sector? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Look, there was a time when there was no IT and people were existing. And we know that in the past, everything which has come, there have been development, there are so many things which have been faded away. Do you foresee that something like this would happen in IT, or do you see that IT will keep reinventing itself?
So one of the trend that I wanted to include was artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? So many of us have seen that and heard about like artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is one of the trend, but I think that this is an offshoot of the need for automation, need for understanding the things better, and that need will never go away. How you accomplish that need is different. So in the olden days when the IT was new and information technology and programming was new, the need was to automate, the need was to make things faster. So you remember the Excel sheets that used to compute large amount of spreadsheets, data, finance, accounting, everything used to be done in Excel sheet when it was first developed. Now we don't really think about that as a problem. We think that there's already a solution. Now, the new type of problem that we have today is to understand our behavior, understand large amount of data, what to do, what the consumer wants. The problem in front of these business is like, what is the next type of product that the customer will be interested in? Those are the problems. Those are the higher level of problem that they are trying to solve. And artificial intelligence, machine learning, it is helping them to solve those problems. So the nature of problem might continue to change, but the underlying solution that is provided by information technology, whether it is in the form of artificial intelligence or in some other form, that will always be there. And in fact, regardless of what business it is you are in, even in medical science and diagnostic field, information technology is just starting to help now. So the limit is really very large, and I don't think anywhere in the future it's going to be exhausted.
MashaAllah. Okay. As we proceed, we have a few more questions which have come in, and we'll take those questions. Some of you who are looking for links as well as details of our guest today, how you can reach out to him, I will request the administrator to share my email address on the YouTube chat box right now. That is crp.head@iou.edu.gm. You can get in touch with me, and inshallah, I will put you on to Mr. Naushad. Mr. Naushad, there has been a trend lately, especially in the subcontinent in India, where many groups have started offering coding classes for kids. And kids as young as 4 years old, 5 years old are being wooed to join these coding sessions. How good it is at that early age? When is the right time for people to start learning coding uh, from an academic perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember there's one person who I follow. He mentioned in one of his interview that when he was 5 years old, his dad started teaching him Fortran. Fortran used to be one of the language formula translation way back 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Now, it's really, there's no particular age. You can start coding or start to learn coding even if you're 70 or 80 years old, or if you're 5 years old, as long as you're able to comprehend. The question really is that really something that you want to do? Because not everybody would be really liking something like that. And I don't want to like downplay any other type of hobby or interest that a kid may have. Maybe the kid is good in sports or anything else, maybe art forms and other things. But definitely coding is going to be helpful if the if the child is interested to do. uh, the important thing is not really how to learn coding. The important thing is to be to have a logical mind. So logical mind, I feel, is an essential criteria for somebody to be successful in coding. Programming language is nothing but logic. Everything that you write uh, is following a particular pattern, a logical pattern. And that logical pattern is an essential ingredient for somebody to learn code, to understand, and be successful in doing it. So I'm okay with that. I don't have any, I don't know much about like how they are being taught, but of course, it is going to be useful in the career if if the child chooses to have that as a career in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a question which is from Ali. He would like to know, is it advisable to pursue one degree in computer science or information systems and another in IT?
IT is information technology, right? So if we information science is probably a very similar type of branch. It really depends on how close that is to the business. So whenever we have a course like masters in computer application or course that is information science, it is it is from a focus from a business standpoint. What are the business problems, and then ability to solve that from computer algorithms or programming languages or computer software. In my opinion, I don't think it is much different. The focus is always underlying on the information technology that allows that to solve the business problem, to understand and have a better solution for any problem with respect to the business.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a question from Asya. She would like to know, what is the advice that you will give to someone who wishes to get into IT field through a coding boot camp coming from a non-IT based background? And her answer she's looking for in terms of employability and opportunities.
Great question. So if there is a boot camp or if there is some introduction where a person wants to be exposed to how coding is done, how development is done, how software programming is done, what is it all about, it is a great opportunity to understand whether you would want to do it or not. It's always been my recommendation that regardless of what your interest is, regardless of your actual career stream or your expertise or your subjects, everybody should understand how the coding is really done in order to demystify it. Otherwise, if you don't know how the programming is done, how the coding is done, it's always a mystery to us. I've interacted with so many people during my career and otherwise, that they think that programming or software development is kind of a black box. They don't really understand what the guys do, what people do as part of the programming. So my suggestion to them is always get your hands dirty, try it out and see if you like it and explore it. Not just as thinking that I will have a career in IT, but also like from from a interest perspective. See if you like doing it. Play it as a game. Do it as a game. You write something, you see how the outcome is. If you change something, how the outcome changes. Those things are very interesting. At least it has been for me, and that has what has kept me hooked to this career.
MashaAllah. There's a question from Sami. He would like to know, I have a master degree in mathematics and currently I'm a BSc IT student with the International Open University. I need your advice on which area that I can find relevance of mathematics, which will also boost my employability.
Okay, it's kind of hard for me to answer that question, but I know that there are a lot of software that allows you to create mathematical models, especially in the research and development area. So I would urge you to explore that option, see how the computing is done in those research and development fields. There are all the companies, like especially in pharmaceutical company, where there is a high amount of focus on research and development, understanding the various the data, the ways to process it, create large models of molecules. Those are the areas where you may find applicability of your skills. And there are software which are really designed for mathematics or mathematical models in mind. So those are the areas that you can benefit from. I don't know on top of my head about those software. There's one software called MATLAB. You can try that. That's very popular software. And I think that being expert on the MATLAB can really find a good job opportunities for that.
Okay, there's a question from Sadiq. He would like to know that today YouTube has got almost a solution to all ICT related problems. How important do you see the study of ICT when you can just simply go to YouTube and learn everything what career opportunities, therefore, does it offer?
Well, my recommendation for learning through YouTube is that you have to be careful on where the source is coming from and the content is coming from. I know that there are a lot of options for a learner. YouTube is one of the options, but there are a lot of universities in the world. They provide their courses completely or almost completely free away to students if they wish to learn it. I know personally because I know that MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is the same city that I am in, they offer a lot of courses on electronics and other branches on information technology, all free online. Everything is available directly from the university. So my recommendation is that look at where the course material is coming from, who is the presenter, who is the professor, and if it is coming from a designated, recognized, large, big university, always try to use those course materials instead of going for personal YouTube videos or somebody who may have just put it without much authority on the subject.
Okay, this seems to be the last question that we have from Rabia. She would like to know, is UI UX design a field of IT? Can an IT student pursue a career towards design?
Absolutely. So user experience is one of the key that business really needs today. One of the challenge why business wants to simplify IT is because its inability to understand that. If you remember, I don't think anyone would have used the very first version of Excel sheet when it was made by, I think it was Apple or Microsoft. They actually tried the command line interface of Excel sheet. And today, you know that we have Microsoft Excel sheet, which is highly usable and very intuitive. That really helps to close the gap between the complications and the complexity of software to the usability in a business. So user experience, better design, everything is always in demand. And I think this is one of the growing areas where business is asking more and more better design, better user experience, ability for the business to directly use the software instead of having somebody really as a developer or a programmer to help them use it. So they want to use it themselves, and therefore design and better usability experience is really, really important. I think it is very, very good.
Okay, thank you so much for taking all our questions so patiently, mashallah. I would like to thank you for taking your time out, Mr. Naushad. It has been truly an honor for me to host you for this session. I would like to hear from you if you have any parting words for our students before I conclude.
Thank you so much to everybody who took time, and thank you so much, Mansoor Bhai, for this opportunity. This is really a great experience, and I would love to do it again if given an opportunity. So look forward, and I wish everybody on this call and maybe in the future for their success in the career, and look forward to connect with you all again. Thank you so much. Shukriya.
Thank you so much, Barakallahu Feek. I would like to thank all of you who've taken time out and attended this session, and I hope this session has been beneficial. My email address has been shared with all of you, so please send in your feedback. If you have any queries, you would like to get in touch with the guest for today, please drop in a note to me, and inshallah, I'll be getting back to you. Most important thing that we have to learn, and being a person who's been very close to communication and public speaking, etc., I have always stressed on this, and I'm very happy today to hear Mr. Naushad also stress on that. Communication is extremely important. That is what will get you through anywhere, everywhere. One of the qualities of all the prophets of Allah was what? It was the communication skill. So when you learn communication, this is how people exist. People survive because of communication. So keep improving your communication, inshallah. And if you need any assistance in that field, in that regards, feel free to get in touch with me. We will be back very soon with more sessions, corporate sessions. And inshallah, we look to again host Mr. Naushad very soon. I will be in touch with Mr. Naushad, and we will try and see what best we can, offer to our students using his experience and knowledge. With that, we would like to conclude the session. Barakallahu fikum. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la